Hello, I am A. M. Batmanabhan from BA LLB Honors. First year, I am going to present law of diminishing marginal utility in this selfie seminar assignment. Let's restart. Law of diminishing marginal utility. The law of diminishing marginal utility is an important concept to understand. It basically falls in the category of microeconomics, but it is of equal and significant importance in our day-to-day decisions. In this article, you will find the definition of the law of diminishing marginal utility, its detailed explanation with the help of the schedule and diagram assumption we make in the law of diminishing marginal utility and exceptions, where the law of diminishing marginal utility does not apply. We will first start with the basic definition of the utility. What is meant by utility? In a literal sense, we should understand what is the meaning of utility. Utility is a capacity of a commodity through which human wants are satisfied. It is a capability of the commodity through which a human derives certain level of satisfaction from that. For example, if I ate one apple because I am very hungry, so I start consuming one apple, it derives me a higher satisfaction than that of the person who not hungry. So the utility derived from a commodity differs from each person. So that's what actually we can understand in this meaning utility. Okay, what is law of diminishing marginal utility? Law of diminishing marginal utility is comprehensively explained by Alfred Marshall. According to his definition of law of diminishing marginal utility, the following happens during the course of consumption. As more and more units of the commodity are used, every successive unit gives utility with a diminishing rate, provided other things remaining the same, although the total utility increases. So, in this case, they assume to take some example. Like I just take the apple example itself. So, if I consume one apple, I derive a particular utility. I just convert it into units. Like I derive a particular utility 20 units, and again I consume second apple. I derive a utility to the extent of 16 units. So the unit which derived from second commodity is lesser than that of the first commodity. So the marginal utility, that is the every unit we consume, the utility gets decreases from each commodity we consume. So but total utility remains positive, remain increasing, but in a diminishing rate. So that that is the concept which is given by Alfred Marshall in his definition. Okay. Okay. Explanation of a law of diminishing marginality. First of all, the utils means utils is considered as a measurable units of utility. So utility, the satisfaction which derives from a commodity in terms of units is called as utils. Explanation for a law of diminishing marginal utility. We can briefly explain the Marshall's theory with an example, with help of an example. Assume that a consumer consumes 6 apples, one after another. The first apple gives him 20 utils, units of measuring utility. Okay, when he consumes a second and third apple, the marginal utility of each additional apple will be lesser. This is because with an increase in the consumption of apple, it is decided to consume more apples first. Therefore, this example proves the point that every successive unit of a commodity used gives the utilities with the diminishing rate. That's what I explained in the definition given by Alfred Marshall. We can explain this more clearly with the help of a schedule and diagram. Okay, let's start. In this schedule, they just drawn up a tablet column. While consuming 1 unit of apple, we derive marginal utility up to 20 units. And after another apple we consume, we get a marginal utility up to 15 units. Like that, it is decreasing. Marginal utility is decreasing each one after another after consuming each apple, each unit of the apple. So the total utility remains positive only to the extent the marginal utility is positive. When marginal utility becomes negative, the total utility also starts to decrease. This is the concept that we come to know in law of diminishing marginal utility. In the above table, the total utility obtained from the first apple is 20 utils, which keep on increasing until we reach our saturation point at fifth apple. On the other hand, marginal utility keeps on diminishing with every additional apple consumes. When we consume the sixth apple, like this example, we can able to take that we have gone over the limit. Hence, the marginal utility is negative and total utility false. So the demand schedule, the law of diminishing marginality tabular column was drawn up in the graph. Saturation point, the point where the desire to consume the same product anymore becomes zero. Where the desire to consume the same product anymore becomes the zero. The point which actually the desire totally vanishes is called as the saturation point. This utility, if you still consume the product after the saturation point, the total utility starts to fall. This is known as disutility. When the first apple is consumed, the marginal utility is 20. When the second apple is consumed, the marginal utility increases by 15 units, which is less than the marginal utility of the first apple because of the diminishing rate. Therefore, we have shown that the utility of apples consumed diminishes with every increase of apple consumed. Similarly, when we consume the fifth apple, we are at a saturation point. That is, the total desire to consume that particular product, that particular commodity totally vanishes. So that point is called a saturation point. If we consume another apple, sixth apple, we can see the marginal utility curve has fallen to below x-axis, which is called as disutility. So when the marginal utility becomes negative, is called as disutility. Assumption in the law of diminishing marginal utility. For the law of diminishing marginal utility to be true, we need to make certain assumptions. Each assumption is quite logical and understandable. If any of the assumptions are not true in the case, the law of diminishing marginality will not be true. Following are the assumption. So this assumption should be taken as a certain condition to be followed in case we have to make law of diminishing marginal utility to be accurate. So it may not be suitable for every on all conditions. So only to a particular set of conditions, the law of diminishing marginal utility can be valid. So otherwise it can't be applied. So this is something which may not be suitable for all conditions. So that's the principle was mentioned in this case. The quality of successive units of goods should remain the same. If the quality of the goods increase or decrease, the law of diminishing marginal utility may not be proven true. Consumption of goods should be continuous. If there comes a substantial break in the consumption of goods, the actual concept of diminishing marginal utility will be altered. So, while consuming a commodity, we should not take any break. So, otherwise, it will alter the desire of the particular person who consumes the product. Then the law of diminishing marginal utility cannot be applied. Consumers' mental outlook should not change. Unit of good should not be very few or small. In such a case, the utility may not be measured accurately. So one apple may be bigger, one apple may be smaller. So that can't be taken taken to be assumption in this case. So every commodity should be of equal quantity. So that's a main condition just follow the law of diminishing marginal utility. As exceptions for the law of diminishing marginal utility, the law of diminishing marginal utility states that with the consumption of every successive unit of a commodity yields marginal utility with a diminishing rate. However, there are certain things on a law of diminishing marginal utility does not apply. So there are many exceptions in this case. Well, if we didn't follow any of the one assumptions mentioned in this law of diminishing marginal utility, we can't able to uh, prove the law of diminishing marginal utility, and it can't be followed if any one of the assumption is not followed. So that's what the exception clause states. Thank you.